is a professor of Spanish at Royal Holloway, the University of London, of course. And her recent interests are on the Gothic and fantastic fiction. In fact, we've just come back from a very interesting conference in Nottingham on women authors of fantastic fiction. She's published 2 books on Spanish Gothic fiction. The Gothic fiction of Abigail Lee Six, Haunting Word, published in 2006. And Gothic Terror, Incarceration, Duplication and Bloodlust in Spanish Narrative, published in 2010. And she's currently working on a monograph on Spanish vampire fiction since 1900. She's published a very useful little book in Manchester University Press's Hispanic text series on Carmen de Burgos, who is the subject of today's talk? Yep. Yeah. And she's published a huge amount on women writers, but also Unamuno, Galdós, Marseille, and I'd just like to remind you of her seminal work on Juan Goytisolo. I think the first major work published on in 1990, Juan Goytisolo, The Case for Chaos, and she's also published a very useful little book, 2001, on Spanish language, because Abigail's always been interested in the teaching angle of research. She's been a great supporter of the Centre for Contemporary Women Writers, with Jill Rye over many years, and is on the editorial board, as you know, and is published in the Journal of Romance Studies. So thank you very much, Abigail.
Thank you for that very flattering introduction. So this is part of the work towards this monograph I'm writing at the moment on Spanish vampire fiction, which turns out to be a very neglected field, particularly in the 20th and 21st century. I've had to cut it quite brutally, so I hope it still makes sense. It's called the Vamp Rehabilitated, Carmen de Burgos' Mujer fría, which means cold woman, in the light of Antonio de Hoyos y Vinent's Señorita, Vampiro, Miss Vampire. Carmen de Burgos, known also by her pen name Colombine, 1867 to 1932, and Antonio de Hoyos y Vinent, 1884 to 1940, were both well known and widely read in pre-Civil War Spain. De Hoyos was associated with the decadent and erotic fiction in vogue at the time, whilst de Burgos was a multifaceted writer and journalist. His publications ranged from articles giving tips to women on how to make themselves more attractive to men, to on-the-spot war reporting in North Africa, to campaigns pursued through activism, journalism and fiction, to legalise divorce, improve education, and tackle Spain's legacy of anti-Semitism, amongst other causes. Notwithstanding these marked differences between the two, they knew each other well, for they moved in the same literary circles in Madrid. De Hoyos wrote flatteringly about de Burgos in 1908, calling her uno de nuestros mejores cuentistas, which means one of our finest storytellers, and the quotes I am using are all on the handout in the order in which you will hear them from. They starting on page 4. So one of our finest storytellers, he described her as. And he is considered to be the thinly veiled real person behind a key character in one of de Burgos' novels called El Veneno del Arte of 1910. In 1919, the Hoyos published a story called El Señor Cadáver y la señorita Vampiro, Mr. Cadaver and Miss Vampire. A story about a man's fascination and one-night sexual encounter with the eponymous woman. 3 years later, Carmen de Burgos' story, La Mujer Fría, the Cold Woman, came out, also narrating a brief relationship between a young man and a vampiric woman. The similarities between the stories go well beyond their common premise, though. So much so, indeed, that readers coming to La Mujer Fría, having read El Señor Cadáver, may well have thought it an obvious and direct riposte. In terms of plot, both narrate a slice of life that opens in a Madrid theatre with an extraordinarily beautiful and fascinating woman in the audience, proceed to develop the male protagonist's infatuation with her, and end with him fleeing in horror following sexual contact. Both depend upon an extended metaphor associating the woman and the man's revulsion with certain deathly qualities, albeit by different means, and both draw on the conventions of depicting female vampires thereby. Alongside these overarching similarities, there are also many echoes of the earlier story in the descriptive details and imagery of the later one. However, there is a crucial difference between the two, attributable to the perspective from which they are narrated. For the Hoyos' story is a first-person account by the man and demonizes señorita Vampiro, whereas de Burgos uses an omniscient third-person narrator who provides access to the thoughts and feelings of both parties as well as others around them, resulting in a sympathetic depiction of the vampiric woman, and by implication all others labelled as such. I'm exploring today the paradigm of the vampiric female upon which both texts are predicated, hoping to contribute to an understanding of the ways in which de Burgos challenged ideas concerning gender and sexual relations prevailing in her time. But in order to do that, one needs first to establish how female vampires were viewed when the two authors wrote their stories. What antecedents did they have at their disposal? Only de Hoyos explicitly names his character a vampire, and he does so, as we've seen, in the very title of his story. With this in mind, my first question when I began to research this was a lexical one. What was to be inferred from calling a woman Vampiro in 1919? Spanish usage nowadays tends to call a non-supernatural femme fatale a vampiresa, with vampira, or mujer vampiro, woman vampire in the masculine, usually reserved to signify the supernatural character. So reading the story today, it's easy to assume anachronistically that it seeks to establish its female protagonist as a supernatural vampire. That's what it would imply if that terminology were used in the present day. But I soon discovered that these lexical distinctions were not in general Spanish usage at the time. And you can see from my page here the footnotes I've got to prove that, which I'm not going to read out to you today. While stories of supernatural vampires like Théophile Gautier's La Morte Amoureuse of 1836 doubtless fed into de Hoyos' ideas, I think these are trumped by two intertexts concerning the type that would subsequently come to be called a vamp. De Hoyos' epigraph is the final stanza of Baudelaire's poem Le Vampire, from Les Fleurs du Mal, which I put on the front of the handout. And from the Anglophone tradition, Kipling's poem, The Vampire, on page 2 of the handout, had been published in 1897. Both poems narrate the subjugation of a man at the hands of an irresistible and heartless woman. Kipling's poem might never have been known internationally but for the cinema. It inspired a play called A Fool There Was, the poem's first line, as you see, and this was adapted in 1914 to become an extremely successful silent film of the same title, directed by Frank Powell, which reproduces the Kipling poem piecemeal in the intertitles. And you can see a poster from the film reproduced on the handout. The vampire in the film is played by Theda Bara, whose performance in this role and several subsequent films made her an international superstar, personifying and popularizing the term vamp, particularly in her role as Cleopatra. In addition to the known international success of the film, certain features of it bolster my hypothesis that when he wrote El Señor Cadáver y la señorita Vampiro, de Hoyos drew on it actively. Amongst the most striking is the cadaverous appearance of the male protagonist of the film, played by Edward José, once he has been in the vampire's clutches for some time and arrives at his moment of revelation of what she has done to him. That moment of revelation, I have taken a screenshot of and put it on your handout, and you can see his cadaverous appearance there. This moment is followed by a flashback. It's amazingly clever how you can tell a story in silent films, I discovered. This is followed by a flashback in which he recalls seeing the dead body of his predecessor and visibly makes connections leading to the same conclusion as De Hoyos' protagonist, when the latter recalls the cadaverous man he'd seen Señorita Vampiro with at the theatre, his own predecessor, and says he suddenly realized, Yo era el señor cadáver. I was Mr. Cadaver. It seems likely that de Burgos knew the film as well and took some of her inspiration direct from there, rather than only receiving it indirectly via De Hoyos' story. Certainly it's possible to draw parallels, whether fortuitous or not, between A Fool There Was and La Mujer Fría, which cannot have come via De Hoyos. Be that as it may, though, the central message De Burgos conveys does open a dialogue that challenges the earlier Spanish story's presentation of the female vamp/vampire, and in particular her motives. De Hoyos' narrator takes the view that los hombres para aquella mujer eran una presa de dinero. Men were monetary prey for that woman. Though impossible to exclude categorically, this seems to be a projection onto her of his preconceived ideas about women of her type. Indeed, the Theda Bara character does seem to be financially costly to her prey. They're to be seen at a luxury hotel in Italy together, for example, and this chimes with line 23 of the Kipling poem, The Fool was stripped to his foolish hide. Señorita Vampiro, however, is already expensively attired before De Hoyos' narrator meets her, and they spend their night of passion in a hotel described as banal, with no details suggesting luxury or pressure on him to spend money on her. It is all too easy, though, not to question the credibility of the narrator's view, given the text's adherence to the premise of the unsympathetic depiction of the female vamp. Let us now compare this with Carmen de Burgos' protagonist, called Blanca, whose beauty is similar in type and degree to that of de Hoyos' character, but whose backstory and motives are revealed reliably. It is only when one reads La Mujer Fría and its entirely different treatment of its vampire's financial situation that one can posit a challenge to the vision of the vamp as a gold digger parasite. From the outside, Blanca fits the same pattern of serial consumer of wealthy men. But the story shows that this is a superficial and misleading characterization of her life to date, and by extension may be equally unjust to other women pigeonholed in the same facile and judgmental fashion. As de Burgos was a lifelong campaigner for improving secular education for girls, it is not surprising that in her fiction, here as elsewhere, she implicitly critiques the position of women with few, if any, options other than selling their bodies to the highest bidder and going on to lead unhappy lives like Blanca, an uneducated orphan with no inherited wealth. Blanca's only capital asset was her extraordinary beauty, which she managed to sell respectably, but without any love or romance on her side. She says, "He ido al matrimonio impulsada por las circunstancias que me hacía aceptar como buenos los enlaces que me ofrecieron. I entered into marriage driven by circumstances which made me accept and approve the matches I was offered." Vengeful megalomania is another motive traditionally associated with the vamp, and the same pattern is discernible here when we map that onto Señorita Vampiro relative to Blanca. Like the monetary one, there is no evidence in de Hoyos' story to bear this out or to exclude it. Again, however, this is not the same as what the narrator believes. Confused and alarmed by a perceived loss of agency, he asks himself on awaking next to Señorita Vampiro in that banal hotel bedroom, ¿Qué me había sucedido? What had happened to me? Articulating his feeling that something has happened to him, rather than that he has been involved of his own volition. He goes on to admit to his asedio a la peligrosa beldad, his ambushing of the dangerous beauty. But by now we've been primed to interpret this as something he could not help, a clever trap laid like bait by her to make him pursue her. This sense of disempowerment chimes with the thrust and especially the imagery of addiction used in Baudelaire's poem. When we read La Mujer Fría, however, a different perspective becomes discernible, which problematizes the vamp's association with a vindictive desire to dominate and thus emasculate her partners. Fernando, the young man who falls for Blanca, also imputes ignoble motives to her. When he first kisses her and draws back in horror, having tasted death on her breast, he beats a hasty retreat. As he thinks things through, his first reaction is not to feel sorry for this woman he professes to love for having such an unfortunate condition, but to project the vamp persona onto her. This is quote 7 on the handout. ¿Acaso no era la primera vez que causaba esa impresión en un enamorado y ya sabía lo que había de suceder? Pensaba que quizás aquella mujer había vivido muchos idilios semejantes y por eso se negaba a ser suya, queriendo dejarle una ansia y una ilusión insaciada, quizás como venganza de todos los demás que la habían abandonado. Perhaps this was not the first time she had made such an impression on the suitor, and she knew what was bound to happen. Maybe, he thought, This woman had had many idylls of this kind, and that was why she refused to yield to him, wanting to leave him with his yearning and excited anticipation unquenched, maybe in revenge for all those who had abandoned her. He will change his opinion once he has found out more about her, but read alongside de Hoyos' story, it suggests that this is the standard reflex response of a man frightened by the power of attraction a woman exercises over him, to label her as culpably vindictive, with or without grounds for doing so. Unlike de Hoyos, however, de Burgos goes on to show how it feels to be on the receiving end of such judgment. While Fernando vacillates over continuing or ending the relationship, making him late the next time they're due to meet, Blanca sentía la angustia, la zozobra de la espera, mirando impaciente el reloj, pensando cosas descabelladas que podían haberle sucedido y haciendo proyectos locos para buscarlo. Blanca felt the anxiety, the apprehensiveness of the wait, looking impatiently at the clock, having silly thoughts of what might have happened to him, and making mad plans to go looking for him. And when he eventually arrives, and again fails to transcend his disgust as he kisses her, he identifies una expresión de desconsuelo inmenso, an immensely disconsolate look in her eyes, which parecían suplicarle que no defraudase su pasión, seemed to plead with him not to disappoint her passion. Did señorita Vampiro suffer similar anxiety on waking up in bed to find her lover had fled without a word of explanation? Was she, like Blanca, left, ovillada and gimiendo, curled up and moaning? De Hoyos provides no epilogue to tell us, nor any insight into her feelings in the course of the story about what may have been a cruel game for her, or maybe, just maybe, a life of serial desertions by men whom she throws into a panic and scares off unintentionally. Be that as it may, as far as the narrated action of de Hoyos' story is concerned, the emphasis is on señorita Vampiro's sexual predation, with the narrator's intuition that he is to be una presa de voluptuosidad, prey to her voluptuousness, being the only one borne out, at least as far as the voluptuousness is concerned, by the description of the sex, which includes her caricias sabias, intensas, profundas, que destrozaban la médula en espasmos de voluptuosidad dolorosa en que se sentía acabar la vida, profound, intense, knowing caresses which destroyed him in spasms of painful voluptuousness to the marrow of his bones and felt like they would kill him. And a suggestively ambiguous reference to feroces arrebatos de un deseo insaciable, ferocious outbursts of insatiable desire, leaving open whose desire this describes. Blanca's characterization interrogates this destructive aspect of the type 2. Her cruel and vampiric sounding nickname of La Muerta Viva, the living dead woman, alludes not only to her abnormally low body temperature and the smell of death on her breath, which I've alluded to, but also fears that her deathliness is contagious, based on the untimely demise of her parents, husbands, and children. In addition to beliefs about plants she tries to tend invariably withering and animals fleeing from her. She's thus portrayed as a woman doomed to be regarded as destructive through no fault of her own, rather than reveling in it. And irrespective of whether such beliefs, she shares them incidentally, are well or ill-founded. This serves to interrogate, I think, the vamp's defining feature. For instead of inculpating the woman for destroying those around her, we see here a character worthy of pity, tortured by her effect on others, and only wishing she could be and be seen as normal. Oh, no me trates como a una diosa, es preferible ser mujer, she says to Fernando. Oh, don't treat me like a goddess. To be a woman is preferable. Fría can be read as throwing down the gauntlet to the Hoyos' and others' portrayals of vamps. For it dramatizes the potential pathos of women labeled as such, and in so doing invites an against-the-grain reading of Señorita Vampiro, Theda Barra's screen persona, et al., whereby they too may have had many lovers for entirely unpredatory reasons. They too may be selling their body and their beauty for lack of alternative ways to survive. And even if their effect on their lovers is to turn them into walking cadavers, this may be unsought and represent a fate more cruel for the women than it is for the men. The narrator of de Hoyos' story, even though he is presa de espanto, gripped by fear at the time, can still leave Señorita Vampiro, and the text's existence proves he has lived to tell the tale and gives no indication of its having ruined his life. Just as Fernando can and does flee from Blanca at the end of La Mujer Fría, and is free to return to the arms of his good, normal, former girlfriend. In conclusion then, for all de Hoyos' image as an audacious, no-holds-barred writer, it is only de Burgos who dared impugn, indeed to turn upside down, the received and fashionable idea of the vamp as culpable exploiter of men, and through the blurring with the supernatural figure, simultaneously to create a sympathetic vampire long before Americans like Anne Rice were to do so.